StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is courage is contagious. Before we get into this, I remind you all of two things. First of all, my daily motivation, Monday motivation message is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day or your week, respectively. All you got to do is text me at my number 305-384-6894. Once we start sending those messages again, everybody in my text community will know about it because you'll be getting messages from our bot, then you'll be getting messages directly from me. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That's the place where I do all my coaching. If you like to have me as your direct coach, and I'm looking for high-level top 2% performers, people who are already in the top 2%, or those who are looking to join them, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Our 4 pillars are mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability. Anything you ever heard me talk about on this show, if it has resonated with you, then the university is the place for you. Again, that's at workonyourgameuniversity.com. All that out the way, let's get into the topic, which is courage is contagious. This one is and should be understood. All right, this title, that is. I'm going to explain this out, but the title is, this is not a metaphor. All right, in yesterday's episode, scaling your life was a metaphor. This one is not a metaphor. I mean this one directly, because you can understand this literally. It is about how one person or a few people having courage will further embolden and encourage others who may not be as courageous, at least initially. Other people who are not as courageous will be emboldened and encouraged by a few who are courageous from the beginning. And as we get into our points, this is going to make even more sense. I don't need to give a lot of background in this introduction. Let's just get right to it. Point number one, today's topic, once again, is courage is contagious. Number one, many people think things that they are not so comfortable saying until or unless they see that others are comfortable saying it. Many people think things that they are uncomfortable saying until or unless they see others are comfortable saying it. How many of you have ever been in a situation where there was something was happening and you were thinking something, but you didn't say it, and then somebody else said it, and then you co-signed it, like, yeah, you know what? That's exactly what I was thinking. How many of you had that happen? All of us have had that happen. I know this one to be a very true point simply because the way that, first of all, in our world today, there are many topics that, depending on how your life is set up, may be a taboo topic in one environment, but completely fine for you to talk about it when you're not in that environment. For example, those of you who work in government, if you work in academia, if you work in corporate America, there are certain things that even if you believe them, you probably are better off not saying them in those places because it may affect your situation, it might affect your job. All right, and any of you who work in those places, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of you happen to work in those places and you agree with everything that's happening in there. So you can say whatever you want. But if you had the exact opposite opinions, you wouldn't be safe in those places if you were to say those things out loud, which is a big challenge in certain spaces. It's definitely a challenge in academia, which is supposed to be about academic rigor and challenging ideas and all ideas being on the table. And let's find out what the best one is based on outcomes. Doesn't happen in academia. Any of you is in academia, whether as a student or a employee, knows this very well. And corporate America also, same thing. Corporate is actually even worse because in the corporate world, people have to pretend like something is one thing. At least in academia, you know you're being quiet and you can just be obvious about being quiet. Whereas in corporate America, you got to pretend like something is one way when it's actually the other way. And you just got to stay quiet if you want to keep your job. So any of you who's been in one of these environments, you know what I'm talking about. And those of you who haven't, just wait till you get in one and you'll find out. So if you work in certain places, certain industries or organizations, there are certain things that you cannot just go around saying publicly while maintaining your employment status. This is just how politics work in any aspect of life. When I say politics, I don't mean governmental politics like winning elections. I mean politics such as how human beings interact with each other. All politics is things that human beings do to further or protect their own personal interests. That's all politics means. So everybody listening to this is a politician on some level. Now, while America, the United States, is the land of the free speech, that is, land of free people and the land of free speech, it doesn't mean that there are not consequences for that free speech. And that's completely fine because not every organization in the United States is completely open source and you can do whatever you want. There are some private organizations that have private rules and you have to go by the rules of that organization. For example, Work on Your Game Incorporated is a private company. It is not a public company, it's private, which means we, being me, set the rules. I make the rules here. So you can't come here and just say whatever you want. You can't come here and say, well, fuck Dre Baldwin, he's terrible, but I work here. Well, no, you'd be fired if you said that. So there are consequences for utilizing your free speech in certain places. And again, those of you who know what those consequences might be in certain places in which you frequent, you know better than to use that free speech unless you're just going on a kamikaze suicide mission for your job. Okay, so I'm bringing all that up to say there's certain things that I say right here on this platform that you might not be able to say because you don't have the platform or because you work in a place where saying it, again, would be a bad idea. So how you utilize your right to free speech matters. And not everybody uses it, not everybody uses it, even though we all have it. Okay. So if I was a college professor, for example, this very show would either need to be shut down or it would get me fired, one or the other. If I had this show and I was working at a college campus, so let's say I had the job at the college campus and they didn't know I had the show, and then they, meaning the people above me, people who can control my job, they found out that I had this show and they heard the stuff I was talking about on this show. They would come to me and say one of two things. A, you need to stop, you need to cut that show, shut it down and delete everything you've ever put out. Or B, you're fired because of the things that you said on the show already. One of two would happen. It wouldn't be just like keep doing what you're doing. That wouldn't happen. In most places in academia, for example, I'm not saying every place definitely is like, there are a few places they'd be happy, but most places they would not. So I would be given an ultimatum. Same if I worked at a corporation. You can't be saying that stuff while you're working at a corporation. So I know that when I say certain things on this platform, I know that I'm speaking for people who may not be in a position to where they can say these things because they are either unwilling to take on the blowback of saying the same thing themselves, or maybe they haven't thought about it the way that I thought about it. So maybe they can't put it into words the way that I would, but they appreciate either way. They appreciate the fact that I'm saying it because they may not be able to say it and they may not have the audience that I have. So they may not have the reach. Even if they said it, only their college buddies will see it because they posted on their Facebook profile. Whereas when I say it, I have a big enough audience that I can get this message out to a whole lot of people very quickly. So the point being, I say certain things here on this show, not because they are revelations to me. I'm saying them because I want other people who are listening to me, who may not, again, have my audience and may not want to use their right to free speech the way that I use mine because of your situation. I'm saying these things so that you know that I know what it is that's going on. I'm saying those for that reason. And there are people in my audience who I know get it because they either tell me directly or indirectly, if not in so many words, that they appreciate the fact that I'm saying certain things that they, again, may not be able or willing to say. And I'm completely all right with that. Okay, I'm completely okay with this. And I've talked about this in the past. This is not my first time bringing this up because I know I'm going to do it. And I know I'm in a position where there's not much anybody can do to me. I can't be fired because I don't have a job. And you can't kick me out of anything because I'm not in anything that I don't control. So even if someone vehemently disagrees with my perspectives or they vehemently disagree with my delivery, any damn thing they can do about it. All right? And we need more people who are in such a position, whether you feel it or it is in fact, because we need people to speak up and say things that go against maybe what people are starting to believe might be true because you're not hearing anything else. But let me get through the rest of my points before I step on that. Point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is courage is contagious. Number 2, when the courageous and truth itself remain silent, cowardice and lies run the situation. When people who are courageous don't talk, and when the truth is not actually said, then guess what wins? Cowardice, cowards who practice cowardice, and lies, things that are not true, they get to run the whole situation because they're the only ones talking. And it was a couple of days ago, I was on social media and I can't even remember who I was responding to. Somebody had said something on X. X is formerly known as Twitter. That's the only app on social media. If you want to see me in comments and going back and forth with people and really actively engaging as far as verbally, not verbally like recorded, but textually talking back and forth, that's the only app that I do it. So if you want to see me doing that, follow me on X. My name on X is Dre all day. And somebody had said to me, someone had made a post and they were saying something that was clearly not true. And I responded and said, that's not true. And I explained why it wasn't true in like 2 sentences. And then someone responded to my response and said, Dre, why are you even responding to this person? Do you really think you're going to change their minds by saying that? And I said to them the same thing I want you to understand. I said, no, I know I'm not going to change their minds. The reason why I'm responding to them and saying what I'm saying is because other people who may be questioning what that person said, but if they look at it and they don't see anyone dissenting, they don't see anyone like me stepping up and saying, no, that's bullshit what you just said. Here's what's actually true. If they don't see that, people may come to believe that what this person said, the bullshit that they said, maybe it is true. Hey, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy to have questioned that in my head. Maybe it is true because nobody else is saying anything. When they see me saying something and saying, no, that's bullshit, and explaining it, they say, okay, I thought I had something when I was thinking that something was wrong with that. I'm glad this guy, Dre, who I never heard of, I'm glad he said something. And I explained that to the person who questioned me, why are you responding to them? And I said, this is necessary now. I believe it's necessary in the world today that people like myself need to step up. And when we hear people spewing some bullshit, we need to let everybody else know and them know, hey, that's some bullshit what you just said. And I'm going to tell you why it's some bullshit and explain it so everybody can see it. Because there are people out there who are questioning what they're seeing and they're not quite sure if their questioning is correct. So when they hear someone like me saying something, they say, okay, that validates it. That validates what you were already thinking. And that's another thing I want you to understand. I don't say these things because I think many of you who are listening to this, you're already pretty smart. You already know how to think for yourself. You know how to get information. You're pretty intelligent. I don't believe a lot of the things that I'm saying here, I am informing you. I'm just letting you know that there are other people who think that way too. That's one of the main reasons why I bring up many of the things that I bring up, especially when I'm talking about current events and social issues. It's not that I am necessarily informing everybody. Some of you I may be informing because you never thought about this stuff. But many of you, I'm not informing you. I'm just letting you know, hey, I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing. And I'm going to say it out loud and I'm going to put it out and I want everybody to know about it. All right, that's one of the things that I'm doing with some people in my audience. And again, some of you, this may be the first time you thought about these things, but many of you is not. So as the saying goes, a lie makes its way around the world twice before the truth puts its pants on. All right, that's the saying. Let me say it again. A lie makes its way around the world twice before the truth finishes putting its pants on. One of the reasons that I got involved, as I just said, speaking on social topics and current events, which I don't do that often. I still would say maybe one out of every 20, 30 episodes of this show, I'm talking about something that's a current event or a social issue. But I do it a lot on X, again, formerly known as Twitter, because I came to understand that we're in an information war, folks. That's where we're at right now. The world that we live in today, we are in the middle of an information war. This is a hot information war. I mean, there's no missiles, no guns, no dead bodies, but this is an information war. That the biggest war played today is not with fists and sticks and stones, it is with information. It's through the verbal channels, what people can say, like this show right here, and the written channels, what people write, like social media, where you can speak and write, and in the written word, media, whether traditional media or non-traditional, such as social media. That's the war that we're in right now. This is an information war. And when people are out there putting out bullshit, somebody got to shoot back. And I have appointed myself as a person who will shoot back. Now, this is not my full-time thing to shoot back, but I do shoot back. So as this war is playing out, when people are out there spewing things that are wholly not true, playing games with the truth, being satanic in their way of massaging language to make something sound one way when it's actually another way, or they're simply repeating talking points that are not based in anything factual, and nobody pushes back against them, those ideas and statements come to be believed. That's what happens. You hear the same thing over and over again, even if you questioned it the first time you heard it. When you hear it 1,000 times and you don't hear anyone pushing back against it, you may start to believe that maybe what you heard is true. Even though you were questioning it at first, if you heard it 1,000 times and no one pushed back, you might start to think, well, hey, maybe I was wrong for questioning it. This must be true. That happens, folks. This is the way the subconscious mind works. You hear anything often enough, even if it's not true, you will come to believe it, especially if you don't hear anything that goes against it. This is how propaganda works. What is propaganda? Propaganda is outright lies, truth taken out of context, and truth that is massaged to sound one way when it's actually another way. All of those are forms of propaganda. And when you hear enough propaganda and no one pushes back against the propaganda, you will come to believe the propaganda. That's the purpose of propaganda, to get you to believe it, no matter what it is. So this is how the subconscious mind works. Anything you hear often enough, you will come to accept it, believe it, and live it out. So one of the reasons that I started pushing back is because I see people pushing bullshit, and I understand that if no one else pushes back, then there are people out there who are impressionable enough who are going to say, okay, well, hey, this must be the truth. But it's not the truth. And so I use this mic and this platform that I've created. One of the reasons that I use it is for this. I was patient zero for understanding this. Where did this begin? Let me tell you. Let me take back to 2016. We know what happened in 2016. No matter where in the world you live, you know what happened. A guy named Donald Trump ran for president of the United States. He won. All right. Many people didn't think he was going to win. I didn't think he was going to win. I didn't think it was a chance that he could win. And when he won, I was a bit, just a little bit, maybe 1% of me was concerned that all the things that I had been warned were going to happen were actually going to happen. Because at that time, I was still on the blue pill. I was still on the blue pill. With any of you familiar with the Matrix, there was the red pill and the blue pill. The blue pill meant you could just go on living life the way you want to live and believe things that you want to believe. The red pill, I'll tell you what the red pill was in a second, but I was still on the blue pill. The blue pill was, and it's ironic that I use blue pill and red pill. You can figure out what that means on your way home. But the blue pill was, all right, this guy's terrible. He's a racist. He just is only going to work for heterosexual white men. They're going to put black people back in slavery. They're going to roll back all the gains of the gays and the transsexuals. They're going to have women back in the kitchen barefoot making dinner. And that's the way that it's going to be if he wins. So we can't let him win. And he won. And a little bit of me was concerned, because 1% of me was concerned that that was actually going to happen. And then when I realized that it wasn't happening, that's when I said to myself, okay, I heard so many people saying this, and they said it so convincingly, and they said it so often, and they said it so strongly that I believed that that is at least the direction they wanted to go. Now, I didn't think it was going to be like overnight armies marching through the streets of Miami, but I did believe that that was the direction that they wanted to go. So when I realized that it wasn't happening, I started to question myself, because even though was still on the blue pill, I'm still a critical thinker and I'm still an objective thinker. And I was still looking at this like, wait a minute, how is it that they were so convinced and so strongly pushing this, but then none of it is happening? Like, how is that possible? How did I fall for this? So I started looking around. And when I started looking around, here's what happened. Because all these things have been implanted into my mind, I realized that I had been living in an echo chamber. I realized the echo chamber I've been living in, a bubble, if you will, was I was only listening to people who were sharing the perspective that Trump's terrible and all these terrible things are going to happen to anyone who doesn't look like him if he wins. And I found out that the fool was not him and the people who supported him. I found out the fool was me, because I'd actually bought into the bullshit and believed that this is the only way things can go, because I was only listening to one message. I was hearing it from different people, but it was the same message. You follow what I'm saying? And I realized, okay, Dre, if you're a critical thinker, the first thing you need to do is open yourself up to hearing other people who have different opinions and different perspectives on this guy. And maybe it'll help better explain what you're experiencing. Because at that moment, I was going through a little bit of cognitive dissonance. The dissonance was I was told that all these terrible things are going to happen to people like me because I'm not a straight white man, and none of it was happening. So there was a conflict between what I believed was going to happen and what was actually happening. I had to make a decision. And the decision many people made and are still on that decision 8 years later is that, well, he is a terrible guy and he is a fascist and he is Adolf Hitler, and he just hasn't gotten around to doing all those things yet. Even though it's been 8 years, he hasn't done any of them yet. He just hasn't gotten around to it yet. There are people who still believe that. Some of you are listening to the show right now. Yeah, I see you. I said, all right, that doesn't make sense. Let me go listen to the people who actually have a favorable opinion of this guy, or the people who are at least neutral on this guy. Let me find out what they're saying. Let me open myself up to hearing what they have to say, even though I've been told that they're all terrible too. But let me find out. Let me verify. And then I started listening to them, and I realized, okay, these people are not that much different than the people on the other side. They just have a different perspective. Like, the things that they're saying, their arguments are cogent, their points are solid, their explanations are logical. Oh, okay, I was the fool. I was living in a bubble. I was living in a mental bubble at that time, and I didn't realize it. And at that moment, this is brief. This was shortly after. I'm talking like the next 10 days after the 2016 election when Donald Trump had won, and people were going into a free fall. I remember down here in Miami, there was a women's march shortly after the election. There was a couple marches that happened shortly after the election. And some people who I know personally participated in these marches. I did not, but I saw the marches, and I saw people who I know, who I respect, participating in these marches. There was a couple of "Not My President" marches. People were actually marching, yelling out, "Not my president." This is after he had won. "Not my president." And I don't know if any of them listen to this right now. They know who they are if they were. There's a couple of those. And there was the women's march where the women were walking around wearing remember the pink pussy hats? Because Donald Trump had the whole grab him by the pussy thing that they tried to use against him in that election cycle, and it didn't work, obviously. But there was a women's march. I remember all these women were out marching. They all had on these pussy hats, these hats that are supposed to be shaped like the female vagina. I don't know what that's, well, let's not even get into that. But the whole point is they had a couple of these marches down here in South Florida. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, these people are still in this delusion that all these terrible things are going to happen when none of them happen. It's been 8 years, none of them happen. And that's when I started to realize, again, I had been fooled. I had to get out of the bubble. And I realized that a bunch of people had been saying so much bullshit so consistently that I had come to believe it because I wasn't hearing anything else. And I wasn't hearing anything else, not because it wasn't there, but because I had made the unconscious decision to not listen to it. But then when I consciously came up for air and I saw, okay, I'm only listening to one side of this conversation, I'll listen to the other side, I realized that my mistake had caused this. It wasn't them, it was me. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is courage is contagious. Number 3, the very purpose of leadership, everybody, is to initiate, to go first, and to be on the front line and show everyone else what to do. That's the point of a leader. That's the leader's job. Be on the front line, show the others who come behind you that it can be done, that it should be done, and how to get it done. That's a leader's job. A boss can tell people what to do. They don't have to do it. A leader, you tell people what to do either by verbally telling them and then you do it, or you just show them, you don't say anything. Either way, you're going first. That's what a leader does. And so when I say courage is contagious, a leader has to have courage, because oftentimes a leader is stepping into something where you're not quite sure of the outcome, but you still got to go first because nobody's going to follow you if you don't go. You can't be followed if you're not moving. This is the purpose of a leader. The very point of you being in a leadership position, to be the one who is willing to go first and set the tone for everyone else to come behind you. That is the reason why you're in a leadership position. Leadership is something that is earned and is not bestowed upon you. You can't make somebody a leader. A leader is something that you have to choose to be. Furthering my point about my red pill experience in 2016, I started to listen to and follow people who had, again, positive or neutral things to say about Donald Trump, about his oncoming presidency, because he wasn't even president yet. You win the election in November, you don't become president until January. And I realized that he wasn't going to put all black people and gay people in chains. He wasn't going to roll back every gain that had happened for civil rights over the last 5 decades. He wasn't going to put women back in the kitchen barefoot. None of those things happened. All right. Any of you who's black or gay or female, did any of those things happen? No, they didn't happen. All right. And some of you are still in denial saying, well, he's just going to do it the next time around. Right. Why didn't he do it the first time? Logically, it doesn't make any sense. We know it doesn't make any sense. I came to realize that he had different views from his opponents. Yes, he did. His views were different. That's why you had Democrats and Republicans here. While his views were different from his opponents, he was not Adolf Hitler. All right. There was no Holocaust that happened in America. Again, between 2016 and 2020, did a Holocaust happen? Was there any genocide? No, none of those things happened. He wasn't about to kill anybody who didn't think like him. None of those things happened. Again, all of those things we have been told were going to happen, they didn't happen. That's just the truth. That's when I realized that as a critical thinker, it was unacceptable for me to not have gotten the right information and understood this sooner. I had made the mistake. It was unacceptable for me to not know what I was just now finding out. How did I not realize this the whole, let's just say, the year that between when he said he was going to run and when the election happened? How did I not realize this? How did I not find this out? How was I so foolish to not see this? Now, because I've been through that experience, I make it my mission to make sure people like you do not fall victim to the same nonsense that I had somehow found myself being a victim to before that election. And again, I wasn't all the way in. I wasn't drowning in the Kool-Aid, but I was drinking. I had a couple cups. I wasn't drowning in it. Some people are drowning in it to the fact that to the point they're still in it now. They're immersed. I was not immersed, but I had a couple sips, and I had to realize that this didn't make sense. Now, at the same time, I got to give myself some credit. Again, I wasn't completely drunk. I've always been an objective thinker. And I still found myself a little concerned because I thought some of it was going to happen, or at least directionally it was going to start moving that way. But as soon as I saw that it wasn't, again, I realized I was the fool. The fool was the guy in the mirror. So my job now is to make sure other people figure things like this out sooner than I figure it out. And I'm using this American politics as an example here, but this is not the bigger point here. The bigger point is somebody stepping forward and letting you know that it's okay to do this, to look this way, to think this way, to say this thing. That emboldens other people to do it, because other people sometimes need to see someone else do it first before they're willing to do it. So I'm offering the opportunity to some of you listening to this to be that person who goes first. Let's recap today's class, which is courage is contagious. Again, this one can be understood literally. Point number one, many people think things that they are not comfortably saying or executing on until or unless they see other people who are comfortable saying or executing on it. And again, this can be because of your makeup. It can be because of who you're around. It be because of your environment. Be because your professional or social setup. So not everybody can do these things. That's okay. That's why people like me exist, to show you that it's okay. Even if you still remain silent, you aren't crazy to think the way that you think. Point number two, when the courageous and truth remain silent, cowardice and lies run the situation. All right, this is one of the main reasons why I started talking about social issues and current events here on the show. Even though 98% of my content is not about that, it's evergreen stuff. But the reason why I do talk about it is because I notice a lot of bullshit getting pushed out there and very little pushback happening to the people who are pushing the nonsense. And I decided, I self-appointed myself to be one of the people to push back against the bullshit being shared out there, because if nobody pushes back, then people who are somewhat in the middle mentally may start to believe that maybe the bullshit is the truth because they're not hearing anybody else say anything else and not saying it in a way that is clear and concise and makes sense. And I believe I'm good enough to do that. Point number three, the very purpose of leadership is to initiate, go first, be on the front line, show others who come behind you that it can be done, it should be done, and how to get it done. That is the job of the leader. You are stepping up, you are stepping forward, you're going to face the brunt of the criticism and the brunt of the blowback. And if you have the balls and the mental toughness and the internal fortitude to deal with it, then it is your responsibility to step forward. It is not an option, it is your responsibility. All that said, text me, see you in my community. My number is down below in the description. Also, Work on Your Game University. We have four pillars: mindset, strategy, systems, accountability. We're looking for high level, top 2% performers, those who are there, those who want to be there, to get your mind in the right place, to make sure you're being held accountable, to implement, to have systems so you can achieve your goals successfully, continuously, and have a strategy to know exactly what the plan of action is, what to do, when to do, where to do it, how to do it, and why to do it, with me as your coach directly the entire time. That's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all